Good evening. I'll call the meeting to order at this time. If you will, please rise for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us pray. Most gracious Heavenly Father, Lord, we come tonight to do business and honor this community, Lord. We just pray that you give each of us thoughts that are positive. Lord, help us to do the right thing for this community and these great citizens that live here and work here, Father. Lord, as a special prayer request, Lord, we just pray that you'll be with those in the eye of the storm, Lord. Those that are in the path of this tremendous storm that's on our coast. We just pray, Lord, that you'll just spare mercy for our community and those that are affected by it, and your will be done. We ask all this in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. And at this time, I will invite Girl Scout Troop 614 to the front to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, ladies.
Good job, girls.
Glad I didn't have to sew all those packets. That's for leather too.
Gentlemen, you have the agenda in front of you. We do have one known addition this evening to the business items. It's for a special event. Smithfield Primitive Baptist Church is requesting to conduct an event on September 22nd, 23rd, and 24th with street closures on East Church Street and South Front Street from East Church Street to East Johnston Street. Any other known additions or corrections to the agenda at this time?
Mr. Mayor, I ask that business item number 7 be removed from the agenda.
Okay. Business item number 7, consideration and approval to eliminate resident rates for youth team sports and kinder sports programs under Parks and Rec. Any other?
Mayor, I'd like to ask that we add a new business item to discuss the future growth of the e-commerce zone in Smithfield Crossings area.
Addition of e-commerce zone for Smithfield Crossings area. Is that correct, Councilman Scott?
Yeah, so we can discuss that area.
Okay. Any other additions or corrections? If not, do I have a motion to approve the one known addition and the one correction and the additional request from Councilman Scott? Second. Motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. All right, gentlemen, we don't have any presentations this evening. However, I did want to read one proclamation that I have at this time regarding Constitution Week. And I'll just read it. Proclamation Constitution Week is September the 17th through the 23rd of 2017. Whereas the Constitution of the United States of America, the guardian of our liberties, embodies the principles of limited government in a republic dedicated to rule by law. And whereas September 17th, 2017 marks the 230th anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention. Whereas it is fitting and proper to officially recognize this magnificent document and the anniversary of its creation, and whereas it is fitting and proper to officially recognize the patriotic celebrations which will commemorate the occasion, and whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America designating September the 17th through the 23rd as Constitution Week. Now therefore, I, Andy Moore, Mayor of the town of Smithfield, do hereby proclaim September the 17th through the 23rd, 2017 to be Constitution Week in the town of Smithfield. And I ask our citizens to reaffirm the ideals and the framers of the Constitution had in 1787 by diligently protecting the freedoms guaranteed to us through this guardian of our liberties. Thank you. Okay. We don't have any public hearings either. The consent agenda. Oh, I'm sorry, skipped over citizens' comments. Thank you, sir. Citizens' comments, we'll move into citizens' comments. Anyone like to speak this evening during citizens' comments, please come forward to the mic and state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Colleen Roby. I'm the owner of Simple Twist right here in downtown Smithfield. We have a second location in the Riverwood area and also in the 4042 area. And I am here to encourage the council to please support the brunch bill that has been proposed. I've noticed that since last month, I was at the last meeting, and apparently there was a little bit of confusion with the voting and how everything's got passed or didn't get passed. And since then, I'm dealing with that confusion on my end. I have people coming into my restaurant at 10 o'clock on Sundays asking for mimosas, Bloody Marys, you know, whatever, and I have to tell them, no, I'm sorry, you know, the town didn't actually pass it. There was a little bit of confusion. I'm trying to sugarcoat it for everybody. But, you know, I'm trying to, you know, oh, I'm really sorry. And I've literally lost guests out of my restaurant going to the town of Clayton to go to have brunch. And I understand that a lot of people feel that there's a religious tie with the brunch bill, and how can you be drinking before the preacher has given the blessing or anything like that. And I understand that, but in this day and age, people go to church on Wednesdays. They go to church on Fridays, on Tuesdays, and Bible classes. And am I not supposed to serve alcohol when someone's going to be in church? Like, that's just not a realistic idea for this day and age. Oh, is that it? Did I get cut off? Anyway. So anyway, I would just like to ask that the council would consider to please, for business sake, and that's what we're all here for, and in support of downtown Smithfield, especially myself, as a local business owner and a restaurateur, please support this brunch bill. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. Excuse me, I have a cold. I'm Billy Stevens. I live at 407 North 3rd Street here in Smithfield. I've lived here for 33 years. This town is very important to me. I try to do everything I can to help Smithfield. I'm here to speak for the brunch bill. I think it is a very important thing for us to for you guys to pass. I'm asking that you do approve it. We need to keep our people here in Smithfield. We don't need them to go to Clayton, or we don't need them to go to Raleigh on Sunday mornings. We need to keep them here so that our businesses can thrive. I personally go to church. I don't see anything wrong with going to church. My church has 8 o'clock service and 11. If I choose to go and have brunch, I can go to 8 o'clock service. I think there are enough times that people can get to church other than just thinking that at 11 o'clock is going to keep people out of church. I think this will allow our restaurants to thrive. I think it will give them more income, and I think it will allow a lot of people, especially that are traveling through town, that don't even live here, that are looking for brunch on Sunday morning, to come in, get a good meal and a libation. So I'm asking that you really consider this brunch bill and pass it so we can just move our town a little bit further up the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. Anyone else?
I'm Sarah Edwards, Director of Downtown Smithfield Development. As you all know, in the letters that were sent to you all prior to last month's meeting, we've had a request from multiple restaurants in downtown, also spoken to other restaurant owners outside of downtown who can potentially expand their business hours based on the passage of this bill, which just makes it a little bit more profitable for them to open their restaurants on Sundays, especially given limited hours. So it's a business-friendly decision, hopefully if you pass it, that we would definitely encourage and hope that you all will consider that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. Anyone else like to speak during citizens' comments? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to the consent agenda. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Williams?
I'm Antoine Williams, and I'm at 6 Cedar Drive, Smithfield. And the question I have is the area over by Pine Acres. We're trying to find out what's going on with that area because we see the people cutting the trees down, but we don't know exactly what's going on in that area. And also, want to ask about the street sweepers because we haven't seen them come through too.
Okay. All right. I'm going to ask the manager. I think you're talking about the lot that's right beside where Kobe is going. It looks like they're clearing that lot there. Do you know anything or can share anything?
I do not have any information to share with you on that. We realized it today as well that those trees have been cut down. I'm not sure the purpose behind that. They don't need a permit to cut those down.
Okay, I understand that. We
Yeah,
just,
so I do not know why they did that.
okay.
And then the street sweeper, Mr. Williams, was that you're just wondering about schedule or?
Well, I'm wondering about it because I haven't seen it come through, and it's been a while since it come through. I ain't gonna say months, but it's been a while. And I know one time, I had talked to Mr. Branch, and he was saying they were down, and he was trying to acquire new ones. So we want to know, are they being acquired? Are they still in the process of being bought or looked at or considered? Because I know in our area, I haven't seen them come through.
Yep.
Yeah, I can also address that issue for you. I appreciate you asking it. Our street sweeper is defunct for the best description of it. There is one budgeted. They are working now, demoing 2 different street sweepers. They have been used in some areas of town just for demo purposes, but we can't use them as a regular route because they're not ours. But that should come before council at some point yet this late summer, early fall, so that we can get one purchased.
Okay, so but we don't know about when the purchase is gonna be, do we?
Well, I hope the council will approve it sometime this fall.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else? Citizens' comments? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to the consent agenda. Gentlemen, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We'll move on to business items at this time, and we'll start at page 77. The first business item is consideration and approval to add to the town of Smithfield's Code of Ordinances, Chapter 9, Licenses, Permits, and Miscellaneous Business Regulation, Article 13, Wine, Fortified Wine, and Mixed Beverages on Sunday morning, Section 9-250.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In front of you tonight is a second reading of Code of Ordinances. In accordance with General Statute 18B-1004C, the city may adopt an ordinance allowing for the sale of malt beverages, unfortified wine, fortified wine, and mixed beverages beginning at 10 a.m. on Sunday pursuant to the licensed premise permit issued under General Statute 18B-1001. Our city ordinance, as is recommended to read, would be the sale of malt beverages, unfortified wine, fortified wine, and mixed beverages shall be allowed within Smithfield's corporate limits at any premises licensed pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 18B-1001 on Sundays, beginning at 10 a.m. All provisions of any town ordinance in conflict with this ordinance are repealed, and the ordinance shall become effective upon adoption. Last month, August 1st, this brunch bill, for lack of a better term, came before the council. Majority of the council supported enacting this legislation for the town, this city ordinance. However, in order for a city ordinance of this type to be adopted on the first reading of our ordinance, it has to be certified by a 2/3 vote of the council. That did not occur. Therefore, it's coming back to you tonight for a second reading and second consideration, at which time all that is required is a simple majority of the council for ratification.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Any questions, comments? I make a motion we approve the draft ordinance number 492. Second. Have a motion and a second to approve the request. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Aye. Motion carries. 4 to 3. 4 to 3. Right, thank you. Passes. That is official, right? Little selfie. And while you're taking the selfie, I would like to just say thank you for Simple Twist and their investment in downtown Smithfield. I certainly hope that all your businesses are doing well, and we look forward to future expansions. Thank you. Okay, gentlemen, we'll move on to business item number 2, which is on page 83 of your agenda. Bid award and contract approval with Claval Valves in the amount of $33,334 for altitude valves. I'll turn that over to our Public Utilities Director, Ted Cradle.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate the opportunity to come before you today and present this. The altitude valves, first off, is a part of the approved budget for this year as a capital project for the water plant. So this is we bid it out and we got the responses, and Claval was the best value, lowest price for the response we got. Altitude valves work. They help keep small systems pressurized equally, so there aren't any low pressure, high pressure zones. Since water seeks its own level, and we've all seen that in a simple high school experiment, any flat system will have an equal hydraulic grade line, which means essentially no matter what you do, the water rises and falls together unless you valve it off. So there's the simple showing that the way our tanks are positioned around town, you notice that Jones Brothers and Market Street tanks are pretty equal, but the Flowers over in West Smithfield actually stands higher. So in order for us to fill the Flowers tank, the grade line in the entire system rises and we spill out at Market Street. And citizens have noted this before, as well as employees, that we're overflowing at times, and we're doing that to try and get pressure in West Smithfield. So also that what we're missing is a gap there that we can never really fill Flowers tank. So it's kind of an issue that we'd like to correct. The current system leaves that about a 15-foot gap in that Flowers Street tank. And if you do a simple math, every column of water for every 2.31 feet, you gain a PSI. So by filling that gap, we'll gain about 6 PSI roughly in West Smithfield, but that's not throughout the whole system. That's just locally around that tank. So we need the valves at all of the tanks, so as we fill it, it won't overflow. And then also you could take any one tank down for maintenance or cleaning or whatever, and the others would remain full. Whereas of now, the whole system would drop. So that's what the purpose of an altitude valve is. That's kind of what it does. This is the actual purchase of the valve. We'll still have to install it, and it's a 6-week lead time after we get approval, so we should get it mid to late October, and then we'll install it. And hopefully the plan is to have everything installed around Thanksgiving. But the altitude valves allow you to lock out other parts of the system while you work on it. It enables to fill that tank locally, and you will not overflow in Market Street anymore. And they'll assist to bring that kind of pressure in areas of town that are suspect. I would like to say also that it's not going to cure all the ills, but it'll certainly assist. It won't hurt anything. So if you guys have any questions related to altitude valves or this bid, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
Should you see an immediate difference, or will it take a little while to get there?
Once you install it, we'll be able to fill that, and we
After
should get, yeah, I mean, you should get an extra 5 PSI. I mean, I don't know what that means in anyone's given home, but you should see a better flow in your shower, I would hope.
So each one of those tanks have sub-tanks.
Sub-tanks? No, sir.
You don't have any division, it's just one solid.
It's one
tank.
solid tank, yes, sir.
I move we approve the request.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the request. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
I do have a further question
Sure.
for him. The quote you got for the valve was 33,000 and something. Who will install those valves?
We'll have to bid that out just like we did the bidding of the valves
That
themselves.
balance of money will go to
Yes.
pay for that.
Okay. Motion carried. Gentlemen, we'll move on to business item number 3, which is on page 109 of your agenda. Consideration and approval to adopt resolution number 611, requesting grant funding for the expansion of the water plant. And that's Ted as well. Turn it over to Ted.
Oh, good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for letting me come before you tonight. I'm here tonight to talk about the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality funding resolution. As part of our application, it requires that the governing body submit the resolution or approve the resolution we submit as part of the application package. The anticipated growth in this town that we all believe and feel strongly is coming, and the proven increased demand that we have through the contract with the county is really leading us to a path that we have to make our water plant a little bit bigger. It needs to expand so it can process more water and meet the demand needs of not only our town that we honestly believe is coming, and that which we know in the county is and has arrived. The original design of the water plant, it predates me, but you guys will remember there were 2 process trains. They built a 3rd some years ago, and the original design allowed for a 4th. So that's what we're trying to do, is build that 4th process train. Currently, we have a permit that allows us to take 6.2 million gallons of water out of the Neuse River on a daily basis. When we increase the size of the plant, we'll be asking for an additional 2.1. In order to process the 8.3, which is what the simple math is, we do need that 4th train to do that. To expand the water plant entirely would include reservoir expansion, additional storage tank, extensive piping. In the long run, the overall project will exceed $8 million, but in my heart, I think we're really talking about 10 to 12 million when it's all said and done. And this is part of the application for funding, grant funding, or loan funding. We certainly will need an outside source to accomplish this. We don't have it sitting in the bank. So the first step is to apply for the funding through the state and federal agencies, and we may withdraw it. I know in the past, in these resolutions, a lot of times the council is leery of getting tied down or trapped, or trapping the town into a commitment that you don't want to. You don't know what's at the end of the tunnel, so don't put yourself in that spot. And I agree with that. But in order to get it started, the funding cycles are 6 months apart, and this deadline was September 30th, and this is the last meeting before that, so we had to get it on this agenda. We do anticipate some of the funds anticipated from the county who are paying for that allocation as part of that water contract. In the next 2 years, according to the contract, they have the ability, and they probably will, at least they've made it their intent known that they're going to purchase that allocation, so we should get at least $3.25 million from them. There's the funding schedule. As you can see, it's a 14-month overall schedule, where the end of September is where we put in the first letter. The letter essentially says we have a project and we need funding. In February, that's the real key date, the letter of intent to fund, the LOIF. That's when they're gonna come back to you, the state will come back and say, okay, you have a project, we think it's gonna cost this much, and by then I'll have all the information and I'll present it in the months to come on total cost and scope and everything. They say that the project's gonna be this, we're gonna fund you for that. Hopefully they'll fund 100%, but if they don't, it'll be up to us to go find another source, and that source could be a loan through another state agency or federal agency. But that'll be the key time they're gonna ask the governing body to accept it. And at that point, you're gonna have to pass, or the future council is gonna have to pass saying, we will accept it and we are going to fund the rest, we'll find a way to do it. You will be locked in at that point, but that point's in February or later. So the letter application deadline, as I said, is the end of this month. If we miss this opportunity, the next cycle's in late April. You can put it off. One way or the other, we'll get there. We'll just get there a little later if we put it off. But what I wanted to say is you're not tied in if you do pass it tonight. But it's your decision. If you don't feel comfortable, we can put it off for a while. I'm fine with that too. But it does get us going down the road. So if you want to start down that road, the first step is the application letter, and it's due this month. And what I'm asking is that you pass the resolution that was included so we can get moving.
Gentlemen, any questions, comments?
We've talked about this for a long time. I move we adopt the resolution.
Second. A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay. Thank you, Ted.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to business item number 4. I'll ask Mr. Seiler to please come forward, discuss electric rate stabilization.
Mayor, council. At the request of council, staff was requested to explore establishing a special fund to help build reserves to ease the impact of future or projected increase in our energy or electric costs. So the suggestion to set funds aside is permitted under a general statute here in North Carolina, 159B 39. So the request to explore is indeed permitted by law. A recent rate study concluded that the town could reduce electric rates. Management recommended a 4.5% reduction that actually took place August 1, I believe, 2017. So depending on future capital planning and cost, staff believes that an additional 2.5% or $362,500 could potentially be placed in reserves to offset or delay future rate increases. And I want to emphasize offset or delay because indeed if rates go up, and I'll show you those figures in a minute, it depends on how much we have in reserve at that time. It will potentially move increases off by a year or two, but eventually that impact would have to be passed on to customers. I thought it'd be good just to look at the electric rate history. And for the most part, this is during my tenure. This sheet changed a bit from the one that's in your packet in that I went back to 2011 here, and in your packet I started at 2014. So prior to 2011, what I saw from time to time were rate increases. And then at the request and guidance of council, that had real concerns about how our rates matched up with our neighbors. In 2011, we did a 5% rate reduction just for residential customers. Again, in 2012, we did a 3% reduction, but it only affected residential customers. Outside of our control, the state of North Carolina jumped the sales tax from 3 to 7%. So customers did get hit with a 4% tax increase in July of 14. I struck through the next line because indeed it's erroneous. I just looked at my notes incorrectly. In 2015, there was a 5% across-the-board rate reduction for both commercial and residential customers. Again, in 16, a 5% overall rate reduction for both. In 2016, a 2.7% decrease. And then finally, the 4.5% decrease that just took place. Those are tremendous decreases that, at the direction of council and staff, that the town has been able to reduce its electric rates. So if we were to do a rate stabilization fund or set monies aside, what would be our goals? According to Electric Cities, they're expecting a 3% increase in the cost of our power in 2020 and 21. So I took 12 months of wholesale costs before the newly 4.5% reduction. I subtracted that off or out, and so 3% equates, on my estimate, to about $323,000 increase in our electric costs in 2020, and again, $332,800 in 2021. Simply showing you this as a potential goal for the reserve fund. Recommended conditions of the rate stabilization reserve. This figure of 50% that I'm suggesting has no magic formula. It all equates to, if the town were to have a major catastrophe, a hurricane that literally wiped out our infrastructure and electricity, how much money would we need to continue to maintain here in the town? And so I'm thinking at least 6 months worth. When you have a major catastrophe, of course, you've got reduced revenue as a result, and you also have the expense of rebuilding your infrastructure. So 6 months is, in my opinion, sufficient. I certainly hope we would not ever need any more than 6 months. It's just one of those things you don't know when you just give it your best educated guess. So last year, our fund balance in electric fund was around 43%. I think this year, after all is said and done in the audit, we'll be at that 50% level. So it's not something that we'll have to strive for. I think that will take care of itself this year. So what we're recommending here is that we set the fund balance reserves aside and actually place it in our annual budget in with our contingency line. So we will have a regular contingency, and then on top of that, we'll place the 2.5% or $362,000 to start building toward that reserve. But we won't move it into the reserve fund balance until after the audit, and we get actual numbers from the audit. Then we will bring a proposal back to the board or a recommendation what we should move that year. Also, because this is new, we revisit this goal a minimum every 2 years to see if we're on track or not. Any questions?
Any questions, comments from the council?
I think it's a good idea. I think the key would be in how you utilize the reserves to offset the rate increases later. Because what you could do is you could put our citizens in a bad situation if you used it to eliminate an increase and all of a sudden they get hit with a larger increase all at one time. So I think the key is going to be how we utilize the spending of it, if you will.
Certainly.
Mr. Tyler, I certainly appreciate your time, Mike, your time in this, Mayor. This is something near and dear to my heart, and I appreciate the efforts. I just like to make a couple comments. First of all, I just want to make sure the citizens understand the goal here is to establish an area for the money to be, so in the event there is a rate increase, as Mr. Ashton mentioned, that this money can be used to offset the need for a rate increase with the goal of getting us as lean as we can in those areas. Having said that, also understanding that anytime you restrict, question for you, Greg, we're not trying to restrict the money used, we're just allocating it in pretty much a line item. That's what, whoever's on this board in the future will know that that was the intent of the money. But you're not restricted to how you spend it if something comes up in an emergency or what have you.
My understanding is initially it's going to start in the budget as a line item, but it's not a specific line item. Again, we're just going to add it to contingency dollars. Once we've had the audit completion and we see how we stand in the electric fund for that year, we at that point would potentially move it over to a reserve fund line item. So it would have its own bank account. Does that mean you're locked in indefinitely and you could never only use that money? That's not our understanding. But it would require coming back before the board to say then you want to move it out and move it some other place like some capital expenditure need.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And the other principal comment, based on this topic, we've done a significant amount of changes to our electric rates, and as it stables out, we may see an area of need. But again, understanding Utilities Commission's got a request for retail rate increase. I think it's important also to point out that we're not going to be affected by that our rates are going to be consistent. That's really not on this topic, but I think that's important to. A lot of us here in the news are asking for rate increases. A retail rate increase does not affect us as a wholesale company or public power community. I think it's important to make sure we point that out as well. Greg, I would like to make a motion we approve this request consistent with your report and understanding that it's going to take a little bit of time to get there after the audit.
But let me also add that in this year's budget, the year that we're currently in, we put excess dollars in the contingency fund. So if I'm not mistaken, it's already there this year, although we didn't have a plan for it. So with the passing of this, at the end of the audit for 2018, those funds could potentially be moved into reserve fund.
So I have a motion to approve, and a motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion? Just one question, Greg. So I know we'll have the minutes from this, obviously, but can we come up with a policy of some sort, so once it's transferred into this reserve fund, of how we will utilize the funds, so to kind of spell everything out and clear, so we don't have to go back and research minutes 5 years from now? And so is that possible? Can we do something like that, Mr. Manager?
Are you asking for a resolution of sorts?
Is that, I'm not so sure, because I mean, the resolution will probably get lost as well. I mean,
If you're asking for a spending policy, it's something we can add to the budget ordinance next year. That'd probably be the easiest way.
Yeah, I'm just thinking some kind of policy that is easily, the manager has access to or something.
Okay. But again, bear in mind, once we've had the audit completed and provided it's a favorable year, that money will be moved into an account that is titled rate stabilization fund.
Okay.
So we will get a bank statement every month of what's on deposit in that fund. It will have its own deposit account and its own specific heading.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. We'll move on to business item number 5. Ask Mr. Johnson to please come forward. Mr. Manager, would it be okay if we spoke about item 5 and 6 and kind of combine the two of those? Is that
I think that would be appropriate, Mr. Mayor.
okay? Is that okay with the council if we combine these two? Any objections there? Okay, we'll move forward.
Okay, as you guys know, we're in the, us, along with the Partnership for Children and the Miracle Leagues of Johnston County, are in the middle of a project to, partnership to build a Miracles, the Miracle Leagues field and the inclusion playground at the community park. And tonight, we're coming forward to ask to allow us to go into contract with Bars Recreation. They gave us the low prices on the playground equipment as well as the field surfacing through the NIPA contract with the National Intergovernmental Purchasing Alliance, which is very similar to the state contract. The Partnership for Children has been working with them, with the design engineers. They talked with several recreation equipment companies to provide the playground equipment, and have been working with Bars for the last 6 months or so to provide that. I do have some additional photos. These are the actual colors and 3D designs from the ones that are in the packet. So if you have any questions as far as that goes, that includes the playground equipment bid. That includes the playground equipment, the installation, and the playground surfacing, as far as the safety surfacing and the engineered wood fibers, kind of two different types of surfacing that goes under the playground equipment. So. Also, we want to approve the surfacing for the Miracle Leagues field. With the playground equipment, they were able to come in with a lower price for the field surfacing, and so we would like to approve that as well, and I have some samples of that.
While Gary's passing those out, any questions? Oh, samples. Any questions? Any questions on either one of these items, gentlemen?
What's the life expectancy of this surface?
7-year warranty, and that is typical of all the surfacing.
That's the warranty? That's
the warranty. It's probably 10 to 15 years before you even have to do anything. You may have to come in and do some seal coating on it or spot placing, you know, in the rougher areas. But that'll be very similar to and then the bases and the pitching rubber and the mound and the home plate area will be painted onto it with the special surface. So there'll be no raised surfaces for wheelchairs and everything like that. And that'll also be in the dugouts.
Any other questions, comments?
Gary,
Go ahead, Councilman.
I noticed that, and perhaps I didn't understand the quotations that were here from Bars Recreation in the, relate to the floor or the vinyl. It's stated at $6.34 per square foot for a total of $94,000 and $466. But on the other side, they were doing a very similar application, and the rate was different. Is there a reason for that, or is it a different material?
He's talking about the pouring place for the playground equipment versus the baseball field.
The port in place for the baseball field as far as, and the playground equipment.
Yeah, I don't know what line item it is, but on page 123, it's on here for $11.70 per square foot. And then on page...
Well, the surface on the playground equipment is going to be thicker than it will be before the Miracle League field. Under the Miracle League field, you've got an asphalt base, and you have a thinner because you don't have a fall zone. On the playground equipment, you have a higher fall zone, so the resilience has to be thicker.
Okay. Well, obviously, I wouldn't understand that just looking at the numbers.
Right, I understand.
So there is a difference?
There is a difference in the thickness of the surfacing.
What was that surface for?
That right there is the Miracle League. That is the colors of the Miracle League field. Yeah, that is, and it'll be very similar to that on the,
But just a tad thicker, you said?
right, right.
Any other questions? I did have one question just for Mike, just for the council's sake. We had a couple items from Miracle League. We had one that was on the consent agenda, and then a couple that were on the regular agenda. Is there any reason for that, I guess, or just?
It's my decision, the way I put the agenda together. I feel that these are big ticket items, big money items, and I also think it's important to update the public on where we are on the Miracle League field and the playground. I know Dwight Morris is here tonight, and I'm sure he would agree with me that this is a feather in our cap, and we need to tout it as often as we can. I think this is an important project that kind of sat for a while as we tried to work out the budget and we tried to work out how to make ends meet with the dollars that we have and the donations that we have. I want to make sure the public realizes that we've done our due diligence here and we are within budget, and this thing is going to happen and it's going to be a great thing for Smithfield.
Okay.
Mayor, I have one other question. I apologize.
Sure.
Gary, and this may be for Greg. Considering the way this is structured, there's a fee for sales tax of $6,000 and then $14,000. Will we be reimbursed that? Isn't this considered nonprofit? So we have to pay it and then they'll pay it back? I think it's important to make a note of that.
Greg, we only get one bid for the.
$20,000 in taxes.
Well, it's through a co-op, and so it's kind of like the state contract when you purchase things. We talked to other playground equipment companies. This was the one that we really liked, and that had all the, because you can't really bid apples for apples when you're bidding that kind of thing, because everything's a little bit different. So, but we did talk to the others.
Any other comments? What's the pleasure of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion we approve both the requests.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve business item number 5 and business item number 6. All in favor, state aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay. Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Dwight, for all your hard work. Gentlemen, we'll now move to the business item that was added to the agenda, that was at your agenda this evening. The special event, Smithfield Primitive Baptist Church request to conduct an event September 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. They're requesting street closures on those 3 days. Mr. Manager, I will turn that over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This request came in late this afternoon. Do we have anyone in the audience from Smithfield? Oh, I'm sorry. All right, snuck up on me.
I did.
Thank you. Let me say a few comments and I'll come back to you. The request is to close Front Street during the times of the event for parking. My understanding is the church doesn't have a lot of parking there, or any parking really at all, so they utilize the street for parking. In the past, we have not closed streets specifically for parking because of the precedent that it sets. And I would caution the council in regard to that. I want to put up a map on the board here real quick. You can stay right there. You're fine. Let's see if I can read your fine. Give me just a second. Get it up there for me? What the map will show is Front Street as it sits today. The request is to close Front Street from Church to Johnston, where this church is located, but because Front Street is a one-way, you're actually going to have to close it all the way up to Second Street. Because otherwise, people will drive down to Front Street and have to turn around when they realize the street's closed, and then they're going the wrong way on a one-way coming back. So I want to make sure the council is aware that even though the request is only for one block, you're actually going to have to close the street from Second Street all the way down to Johnston. They're also requesting police assistance in allowing people to pass the barricades that will be attending the event. And I'm not exactly sure, you can probably address that better than I, what you're asking for. But if we need to have a police officer sitting at the barricades deciding who goes in and who goes out, we would have overtime involved, and that would be about $600 of an unbudgeted expense of the police department. And that's, here's your map. Your church is located there, and they're wanting to close this block right here. But all the way down here and over is what would have to be closed in order for traffic to move smoothly on Second Street and not turn onto Church and go the wrong way coming back. Ma'am, I'll let you go ahead and thank you. Could you also introduce yourself?
Yes,
Provide
good
your
evening.
address?
My name is Judy Flowers, and I'm a member of the Primitive Baptist, Smithfield Primitive Baptist Church here on Front Street. I'm also the church clerk. We, every 6 years, will be host to an association of churches that's 6 different churches across the county and some in other counties too. And there will be a lot of visitors. We have people from other counties that will be attending, as well as our sister churches. We will have people from out of state. We usually have, I don't know, anywhere from 12 to 20 different visiting ministers that come each year. And again, Smithfield will only host this every 6th year, since we're one of 6 churches that are in the association. Every time we have an association in Smithfield, we have the same problem with parking. It's happened numerous times in the past. It is such a tiny little area that we have to park right between Hastings House and our church. And we will also be catering this event, and so there will be a large vehicle that will come in to bring food each day at noontime. Again, we don't want to be unreasonable, and we understand there are problems, that are associated with this. But since that's the only way we have to, to let people park on the street, except the very few that can park in the parking lot, it just becomes a real big problem with visiting people, from everywhere that come and don't know where to park. If it is a big problem to block off the whole street, it was just a suggestion that somebody made when I visited earlier today and brought the application to block off just part of the street. But I see what you're talking about, that it would be hard to have somebody come partway down the street and have to turn around on a one-way street. I'm open to suggestions. Is it possible to park in the cemetery, the new extension to Riverside? Or what do you all suggest? But we do need parking for a lot of people. How many people? It's so hard to tell. It varies from year to year, but I'd say somewhere between 75 and 100 each day. It doesn't mean that will be that many vehicles, because, there will be people that travel together, and there may be some days that are considerably less. But we do need somewhere for them to park.
Here again, I'm just thinking of ideas to solve your problem, but what about Johnson Street? What about closing Johnson Street between Second and Front?
But using the municipal parking lot and the Methodist Church parking lot. There'd be some.
The Methodist Church, that's not very close, is it?
Wow.
It's,
Right across from the Little League Theater.
You can show them on the pointer.
See, there, I think.
And you got municipal parking right there at the corner of Second and Johnson.
Market, right there's the parking thing.
A lot of our visitors will be quite elderly, and some in wheelchairs, some with canes and whatnot, and they really can't block, they can't They'd have to be dropped off if it was very far to walk. There's no chance of parking in the cemetery?
Well, and my concern about the cemetery is you're looking to close it for 3 days. And what if there's a funeral there?
Yeah, that would be a problem. Well, we would, move if it was necessary, I can assure you that.
One of my thoughts was if we could sort of put out cones for you and reserve, of course, nobody really parks there anyway, but the left half of that street, you can get a lot of cars, and then you can get a lot of cars parking on Johnson Street. And you're really not having to walk any further. If you park halfway down Johnson Street, that's no different than at the end of the front.
No, Johnston Street would be fine, it surely would. I still am a little bit confused about the Methodist church. I know the Episcopal church is around the corner, but I still don't quite.
It's the next block. I mean, the Episcopal church is here, and Methodist is right. See block 104, that's exactly what's
It's noted.
Well, it's still not close.
Well, Johnson Street is here, and the very next street up is Market Street.
Right.
And that's where the Methodist church is.
Oh, I do know where you're talking about. Just dawned on me. I was thinking the other direction.
And it's been extending, since they bought the property along Market Street, it's now fronting on Front Street.
Would we have to get their permission to use their parking lot?
Yes.
We certainly could not give you
Right.
blanket permission to use it.
Certainly.
And I don't know how we would get the information to other people where to.
Probably would be Sunday.
Ma'am, have you considered, using the town's parking lots and maybe having a van that could kind of run a small shuttle to get your people where they need to be so they don't have to walk? Do you have any resources that could do that?
No, I had not considered that, but most people who come really want to be there to hear the preaching.
I understand.
What he's suggesting is you can park off-site, shuttle, bring them back and forth. They shouldn't miss anything if you have a schedule. They'll know when the schedule is, and they can be driven back and forth by shuttle.
Well, how do we go about getting a shuttle? I don't know anything about shuttles.
You can park, the attendees can park on Front Street irregardless of whether we close the street.
Right.
But I understand the traffic's barreling through there, and I know most primitive Baptist attendees tend to be older adults.
Yes.
And like I said, I suggest that we probably put some cones out along the left side of Front Street, and then maybe consider blocking off Johnson for their purpose. I mean, I don't think blocking off Johnson is gonna hurt anybody.
That would be great. Thank you.
I mean, y'all think that would hurt anybody? Well, they could come and go.
Probably allow the residents, just notify the residents.
I mean, what says our police department? Our pleasure. Well, that's another issue.
We're not asking for somebody to stand there and,
You need about 35 spaces, right? You got 70 people coming?
I would guess.
I would think the police chief between the Methodist church and the Johnson Street could find 35 spaces. I'll put him on the spot. They'll agree with it.
Who would we contact at the Methodist church?
I think you're gonna be closer to use municipal parking right there than you are the Methodist church.
Yes, it is.
That's a Friday, right?
Yeah, it's a Friday. It'll be packed when they start on Friday. All the parking will be.
Friday and Saturday will be the bigger days. There'll be smaller groups, usually on Sunday.
So what about just blocking off Johnson Street, like you suggested?
And maybe putting some cones up on front. Not that anybody's gonna be parking in those spots anyway, but just show it.
They can park there anyway, can't they?
But I guess what you're saying is that would at least reserve them for the event.
Right, and get people
And that
to
way you
maybe
don't have to
slow
close
down
them.
if they saw it.
Maybe.
Friday is a business day, and people who work in Smithfield sometimes use up-air spaces. That was part of the issue. So the cones would help, yes.
What do you think, gentlemen?
So you're suggesting that motion would be to block off Johnson Street,
And put
between
cones.
Front and Second, and put cones up on the riverside of Front Street for them to park there. Is that correct?
Yes.
I make that motion.
Have a motion and a second.
I just have one question about that.
Sure.
On Friday, again, I'm not to put anybody out, but there are several businesses on Johnson Street that do
It starts
require
at 8
parking.
in the morning.
I'm sorry.
It starts at 8 in the morning. We'll be doing business hours.
If it starts at 10:30 in the morning, that's going to
No
be
animals are involved.
several businesses out perhaps.
Well, I think that is a problem. But I think it's gonna be more of a problem for the people patronizing those businesses that will do business under.
Sarah's here, and she's dying to say something.
Not to put you on the spot.
So leave Johnson Street open on Friday. Methodist parking lot, and then close it on Saturday.
Well, you could even leave it open on Saturday.
Just use it.
So don't close Johnson Street.
Thank you, we appreciate that, but I'm still not sure how in the world I'm gonna let people know that they need to park at the Methodist Church.
How are you contacting these people? Is it through email, is it through letters?
Well, generally telephone, but,
I could produce a map for you that would show the parking areas like that day. That would be helpful if you have ways that you're getting back people.
Are you gonna have people outside? I mean,
No,
during the
this
time
is-
they're coming in, or?
well, this will
I mean,
be inside the church,
Right.
pretty much, but now we usually do have some tents set up for an overflow of tables because our little, downstairs, fellowship hall is not big enough to serve that many people at one time.
If we can work out Friday, and I think there's probably gonna be enough spaces along Front Street anyway. So we think we can just cone off the left side of Front Street for Friday? Let's do that.
And help her with the parking at the Methodist Church, perhaps.
So, right, and you can just call the Methodist Church number and get, and speak to them directly. Of course, also, I mean, I can get you in touch with the minister as well.
Right.
Sarah Edwards here is in charge of our downtown association, so she's got a card for you, and that might be your best contact to help you out, some of those
Okay.
conversations.
So my motion needs to be amended to what?
We're gonna cone off Front Street parking for Friday, and then Saturday, we'll keep that coned off and also close Johnson on Saturday and Sunday.
Okay.
So, you amend the motion?
I amend my motion to what Mayor Pro Tem
And
actually
who
said.
seconded it? You seconded it? Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So I have a motion and a second based off of the amendment.
So,
Councilman Harris?
So you only, you gonna speak, Sarah, you gonna get with her afterwards? Okay.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. I've already talked with someone about this, and they said it depended on what happened tonight, whether or not they would supply some garbage pails and things for us.
How's Mr. Branch right here? And
Will that be
we'll provide
passed-
some cans.
That information will be passed on to them that it was approved, I mean, what you did approve.
Yeah, he's right there.
Thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you. Good luck with everything.
We have all your contact information? We have all yours? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, gentlemen, we'll move on to business item number 8, which was the addition of future e-commerce zone for Smithfield Crossings. I'll turn that over to Councilman Scott for discussion.
Mayor, thank you. First of all, I think we need to clarify the term as more, not necessarily e-commerce, but the area Smithfield Outlet Center, North Equity, South Equity Drive, and Venture Drive. I appreciate your consideration to add to the agenda to the council. I'd like to bring up a few points. We have had some, obviously some noted challenges in the area related to the traffic flow, the pedestrian flow, and there's a lot of growth and other things going on in the area. Without kicking the can down the road, I just feel it's essential that this committee, this council, consider putting together a committee to help come up with a plan for the future. When I say the future, talking about many years to come. I would like for us to consider all options out there, and part of this committee, I feel it's important that should be represented by this council, members of this council, as well as citizens that have interest in the area, and also businesses that potentially could be there or are there, and how we could come up with a plan. My thought is, obviously, we know that the traffic circle, the traffic plan, and there's many other parts of that that's not mentioned, including stormwater flow, vegetation control, sidewalks, traffic signals. There's a lot of stuff that's not been discussed, and these are things that I feel like that we need to have input for the staff. And I understand the manager and staff planning department are putting together RFP. And I feel like that's very positive. I feel like we just need to put together a group of people to help support that. I've talked to many of you on the board about this, and I just wanted to bring it up. There's been some concerns in the area, but it's very near and dear to my heart that we make these improvements. It could take years to come. If we don't get started now, it's not going to happen. The other thing I'd like to say, there's been a lot of discussion that affect the Smithfield Crossings area dealing with finances. We've had several discussions since I've been a part of this board, knowing this project's been done years ago, of how we would pay for it. And I feel like that committee could possibly come up with some ideas. We've talked about a local bill to support maybe the use of tourism funds. We've talked about special tax district. We've talked about many different things. But I feel like that we need to formally put together a committee and make this happen. There's some residents in the area that's in uproar about potential changes in the area. All these things need to be considered, and I feel like that would be a formal way of doing that. I hope I made myself clear. And I would put that in the form of a motion, very simple.
Okay. In your motion, Councilman Scott, is to actually create a committee to look at this. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, made up of council members as well as
Citizens.
business owners, citizens, and so forth.
And I'd ask you to chair the committee, Mayor.
Okay. Thank you.
I second that motion.
And for purposes of discussion, I think we're going to need representatives from the Pine Acres subdivision.
Absolutely.
I think when you start looking at the, if you will, pods and businesses out there, we probably need somebody represented along that cut-through road where Ruby Tuesdays is and CC's, and you probably need somebody on Equity Drive. I know Hank Daniels would probably be interested. And then to make sure you have all the interests represented, I think that's a great idea, Travis.
Well, thank you, Councilman Ashley. I spent some time with out there, and actually a fellow council went out there, and there's a lot of things to consider. Keep in mind that if you look at the North Carolina Department of Transportation plan, that interchange is going to be updated. And this all needs to be incorporated. And there's a lot of opportunity, but Smithfield's kind of been punished because of this, I feel like, in a certain way. And I think we can overcome it and make it better for everybody. It's an area we ought to be proud of.
Well, it definitely is a major area and a major attraction, and certainly think we need to continue to look at improvements there, as well as continue to plan for the future. So again, I think it's a great idea as well. And also, I'll remind the council that we did receive the funds from the from the state, correct? That has been the positive manager from the sale of Ava Gardner.
Yes, sir.
So again, we could potentially utilize some of those funds to help with planning, study, or whatever for that entire area, I would think. But obviously, that's something that the committee could look at and bring back to the council. So, okay. I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? So, at this time, is there anyone on the council that would like to serve on the committee? I see Councilman Lee, Councilman Harris, Councilman Scott.
I also have interest in it.
Okay. I think probably three is probably.
Can I have any more?
Yeah.
Could we potentially identify an alternate?
And I would like to ask, some of these committees that we have, even if we're not committee members, can we get notice of meetings in case we wanted to go and just be a silent bystander?
Definitely, we'll make that happen. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna go, point council.
We gotta watch, we watch that, right?
Well, I understand. You can't have full.
Sure. Okay. Well, as long as you're not participating in the discussion or voting on it. It's a public, it's a public meeting. We'll look into it, Councilman, actually. I don't think that's an issue. All right, Councilman Lee, Councilman Harris, and Councilman Scott. I'll be alternate. Okay. Councilman Rabel as an alternate if needed. Okay. And I'll ask staff if, I'll ask the council if you guys can submit some names to myself and the manager over the next couple of weeks, some business owners, citizens, and so forth, and then we'll go from there. Councilman Ashley again? Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Do we need to vote on it? We did vote.
Again?
Okay, gentlemen, we'll move on to, I think that was all the additions to the agenda. Move on to council members' comments, and would like to start by just a couple comments regarding recent weather situation that we had with the straight line winds a couple of weeks ago. I just want to give a shout out to all the town employees, all the departments. You know, as a citizen and not seeing all that goes on since I've become mayor, I actually participate in some of those activities, just watching, and just actually kind of seeing what goes on, and it's truly amazing the amount of efforts that go on when situations like that occur. I know that Councilman Rabel, when I went over to the fire department, he was over there answering calls and taking notes just as fast as he can, and Sarah with downtown was answering the phones as they were coming into the fire department, and I know several members, Councilman Scott, I think you were on the call just about all night probably, but it was truly amazing to see the cooperation and what goes into those type of efforts. And as I rode around that night with the chief, trees that were down at 6 o'clock were cleaned off of the road by 9 o'clock or so, and there was quite a bit of damage that happened. So I want to say thanks to everybody, Ted, your crews. I don't want to leave anyone out, so I bet everyone, police department, fire, EMS, just did an outstanding job. And did want to just touch on with, we've got a pretty major storm that's brewing off the coast of the United States, and I did want to just kind of read some comments about that, if you can bear with me for a second. On August 25th, Hurricane Harvey made landfall as a Category 4 hurricane near Rockport, Texas. Harvey hung around southern Texas for days as weakening hurricane and tropical storm. An estimated 40 to 52 inches of rainfall dropped in southeast Texas and southwest Louisiana. FEMA Director Brock Long called Harvey the worst disaster in Texas history. and expected the recovery to take many years. 60 deaths are attributed to Hurricane Harvey. Economic losses are preliminary estimated at between 70 and $190 billion, and tens of thousands of people are still in shelters. Having dealt with catastrophic flooding due to Hurricane Matthew last year, our thoughts and prayers are with the people of Texas and Louisiana. We know how devastating it can be to watch the floodwaters rise into homes and businesses in our community. It is hurricane season, and Irma is currently churning in the Atlantic as a Category 5 hurricane. Due to the uncertainty of the path Irma will take, I urge all citizens to continue to monitor the situation and be prepared in the event that this hurricane turns northward towards the Carolinas. Websites such as Johnston County Emergency Services, readync.org, ready.gov, the Smithfield Police Department have vital information on hurricane preparedness. Johnston County has also changed its Code Red notification system to JOCO Alert System. It is Johnston County's primary emergency notification system, providing critical, time-sensitive information to the public during emergencies. Citizens can register for this free service on Johnston County's website and the Town of Smithfield's website. The Town of Smithfield will also post information on our website to help you prepare. It is our hope and prayer that Hurricane Irma will weaken and cause minimal damage. Please know that the Town of Smithfield staff will be prepared to assist our citizens in any storm event. And I think the chief has some flyers on JOCO Alert System. So is that correct, Chief? You have some with you? So if anyone has not signed up for this system, please see the chief. He'll give you a flyer, and it's very easy to sign up for it, but it does provide critical information in a time of emergency, and I urge you all to please sign up for this. Thank you. Any other comments from the council? Okay. Seeing none, I'll turn it over to manager for his report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just add a couple of things to that. The chief has the flyers, but our town clerk also placed some on the podium back there, so you can grab those on your way out as well if it's simpler. Also, I ask the citizens of our city to do a little bit of their due diligence to help us out during these events and prior to these events. If you own a property that abuts a street or in front of a street, please take a little time during this hurricane season to make sure your ditches are cleaned out, your gutters are cleaned out, and if you have a storm sewer nearby, please try and keep things off the grate. Take a little time on Saturday or when you mow the grass and make sure that that sewer grate is clean. Our staff is doing its best to keep those clean during trash pickup days, but there's no way we can hit every single one. So by keeping those clean and free of debris, flooding will be hopefully a whole lot less here in Smithfield. Also, if you have grass clippings or you have debris from cutting down a tree or something in your yard, please place those on your boulevard. Don't place those in the street so that when it rains, it washes down to the sewer grate. The Public Works Department will pick those right up off the boulevard. It's a whole lot simpler and a whole lot cleaner for everyone involved. Lastly, we provide that service of yard debris pickup to our citizens for their debris. It's not intended to be used for contractors who are coming in and cutting large amounts of trees and things out. Those contractors are expected to take that debris with them, not pass that expense on to the city. So please encourage your contractors to do their jobs that you pay them for and take that debris with them. Mr. Mayor, I'll give you a quick FEMA update. We have received all of our reimbursed funding from FEMA, except for about $85,000. Today we received a check for $230,000, which is the federal government share of what would be our last expenditure for the water plant and what went with the water plant during Hurricane Matthew. The state will provide the additional $85,000 once they have come and actually inspected all of our repairs and certified that those are completed to their satisfaction. That may take a few months yet, because they're making their rounds around the state to do that. So we have every confidence that that will be done, and we'll receive the last $85,000 once that certification process is complete. We do have $230,000 still out there that we have told we will be allocated, but that's not reimbursable funds. Those are funds to repair the wetland facility by the J.C. Kitty Park, which we have not started yet. So we will be waiting to repair that facility until such time as the funding comes in. In your monthly report, you have some information on grants that we have been trying to pursue. I wanted to update the council a little bit on the CDBG grant that I talked about 2 months ago. We were hoping that there would be CDBG money come around for what would be its normal uses, but as it turned out, that CDBG money is now CDBG-DR money, which stands for disaster recovery. So we have to find, in order to apply for that type of grant, it has to be applied to residential properties or apartments that have had damage from Hurricane Matthew that were not reimbursed through FEMA or some other funding source. And frankly, we don't have a lot of that. Also, the income level has to be moderate to low income families. And while we have our share of those, we don't have a lot of them that sustained damage during Hurricane Matthew that were not reimbursed through FEMA already. So unfortunately, there won't be a lot there we can take advantage of. I also wanted to provide a bit of good news. The Public Works Department, the Parks and Recreation Department has announced that in 2019, we will host the Summer State Baseball Tournament here in Smithfield. That'll be a very large event. We have the girls softball here this year. 2018 we'll have a pass, but 2019 we'll actually have the boys baseball here. So that's exciting, something to get out and plan for. And should be quite an economic driver for our community during that time. Lastly, we're in September. September means September 11th. There will be a ceremony at Triple S High School, as there is every year, on September 11th, starting at 7:20 in the morning. Recognizing that day also, for the first time, this is Emergency Responder Day, as dubbed by the legislature this last term. So please get out there and shake a hand of an emergency responder and thank them for what they do. As the mayor said, they work very hard for you, and they are very professional, and we're very fortunate to have them all. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. At this time, gentlemen, that concludes all our regular business. However, we do need to go into closed session to discuss a personnel matter pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318-11, Section A6. We have a motion and a second. And a second to go into closed session. All in favor say aye. Go into closed session at this time.